We're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to the New York City Virtual Tableau User Group. My name is Chris Kawa. I'm currently Director of Analytics and Reporting at Emory. I help to co-lead the New York City group. Been using Tableau for almost a decade and participating in the user group almost as long as that. So we have a great set of panelists or presenters today. Jumping right in, we have a couple of slides to go through as an intro. Then we'll be passing it over to, we'll be starting off with Steve Wexler at Data Revelations. He's going to talk about how to get people to value data visualization and you. Next, we'll be passing it to Roshni Gohil from MIT, talking about usability testing dashboards. And finally, we typically like to have Tableau lightning tips, a set of 5 minutes of quick Tableau tips. But in light of the activity on Twitter this weekend from Adam and a couple of other community members like Luke Stankey, Jeffrey Schaefer, Mark Reed, and Sam Parsons, there's a lot of great functionality out of a new feature in Tableau around the map layer. So we thought this would be a good time to bring that in to show what's available in 2020.4. So Adam is going to be walking us through that. So welcome everyone. Nearly half of you are first timers here, so I'm so happy to have you here with us. We always like to do, look at, who's part of the group, who's participating, and you can see a list of roles here broken down, your peers here, all the way from analysts to designers. And we typically like to highlight the top registered companies. So you'll see this list spans, cross verticals, cross industries, Environmental Defense Fund, LinkedIn, Memorial Sloan, Morgan Stanley. So thanks for being here with us. And so for those of you who are new, the general purpose of the TUG is to connect with other people, share knowledge, collaborate. I know connecting and networking is much easier in person, and we hope that will be again in person in 2021. But we hope that there's a lot of good content here that you could take back to your jobs and apply and just overall be inspired. We like to think of these user groups as mini or micro Tableau conferences that could really get you amped up. So highlighting a couple of things in the community. So the annual Iron Viz competition now has a student edition. The deadline for that, so if you are a student or know of a student, deadline for that to submit is December 20th. And then the Tableau customer conference was back a month or two ago, but Salesforce has their annual customer conference coming up. They had their keynote last week. They have their more in-depth sessions next week. So stay tuned for that. There will likely be a lot of Tableau sessions and how that fits into the broader Salesforce ecosystem. And we're always looking for people to either help host or help present. So you can go to this link on the bottom there and fill out a form if you're interested. So we thank you for volunteering there. And finally, to make sure you're up to date on all of the meetings, the top link there is the best way to stay connected. Tableau has their own customer list that they will blast out that we don't have control of, but if you subscribe to that link there, that will ensure you get updates to meetings. You could also follow us on Twitter and LinkedIn. So with that said, we're going to get right into it, and I'll pass it over to Steve.
Hey, thanks so much. Give me a second to get everything queued up. Also, just a quick shout out to Jacob. I've got the hat here. So it's a kind of a running gag going back for a few years. All right, how to get your organization to value data visualization and you. Very briefly, I am the founder and principal and sole employee of Data Revelations. I was Tableau's inaugural Iron Viz champion. It was back in 1964. I'm a Tableau Zen Master and a Hall of Fame. And if you're in the Tableau community, you know that that's an actual thing. If you're not in the Tableau community and I hand you a business card, oh my God, wouldn't it be great to actually be able to hand somebody a business card again? In any case, if I hand you a business card and it says Tableau Zen Master, you may think, oh my God, this guy's a complete tool. Who puts Zen Master next to his own, on his business card? It is a real thing, and I'm certainly very proud of it, although within the data visualization community, the thing I'm most proud of is being one of the 3 authors of the Big Book of Dashboards. I show this next slide in practically every workshop, every presentation, and that is you are encouraged to disagree with me. Good things happen as we debate and discuss these things. Now, granted, this is a webinar and not a meeting, and I've got the cool, presenter where I can do, the clicker where I can do stuff like this. But if something doesn't resonate with you or that's not been your experience, you can point that out in the Q&A, send me an email. I would like to hear from you. All right, so hopefully your organizations are enlightened and they really get the value and how potent a good data visualization can be. And I'd love to visit that organization because a lot really haven't gotten on board thoroughly. But if your organization doesn't value data visualization, are they going to value the data visualization practitioner? Meaning, are they going to value you? So I kind of want to get you where you can get them to appreciate the incredible things that you can bring to your organization. So I'm going to walk you through some of the things I think you're likely to run into, that I've run into, and certainly over 1,000 people I've chatted with about it. And the first is kind of, you're probably going to fight this notion of people who just love seeing their numbers. They love seeing their spreadsheets, and you have to explain, well, that's not good enough. We can do way better than this. Yet I'll ask people at gatherings when we have them, how many of you have colleagues, stakeholders, bosses who just say, look, I just want to see all the numbers. I want to see the spreadsheet. I want to see the numbers. Hey, can you make it so that I can download all the data? Things like that. And I've been battling this for most of my data visualization career. And if I were to encapsulate this into one person, it might be, this composite user. You can have my spreadsheet when you pry it from my cold, dead hands. Well, what can we do to get them to realize, just looking at numbers, you're missing stuff. Now, let's say I were to show you sales over a 12-month period, consumer, corporate, and education. Overall, which of these 3 areas has the highest sales and which has the lowest sales? And they'd say, well, that's easy. You can just put a total at the end of it, and I can see that. Corporate is higher than consumer, is higher than education. What's the big deal? Okay, granted, put a total at the end of the spreadsheet. Suppose you want to know, well, was that not the case? Was corporate always the top seller? Was education always the bottom seller? Were there big dips and valleys? That's really hard to tell in this. It would take you a good 20, 30 seconds. Yet if I display the data like this, instantly you can see corporate was always on top, except that huge dip in March. What happened there? And consumer had a dip in July. Whoa, and that's a big dip. You probably want to know what's going on there. That's very hard to see when you're just looking at just the numbers. So here's the before version and here's the after version. But people looking at it, they may go, well, I really want to see the numbers. And they may ask you to do something horrible, like put a number on every single point on the line, big fat mess. How can we start to get them to see and appreciate what data visualization can do? And a bunch of you may have seen me do this before. I think the highlight table is the gateway drug to data visualization. For all these cross-tab spreadsheet loving people, what can we give them so that they can say, ooh, this data visualization stuff, maybe it's worth looking into. So you probably, look, many of us are veterans of Tableau, and the superstore sale data set, but you've got these 4 regions along the top, and you've got these 17 different product subcategories here. Overall, which combination of region and product subcategory has the lowest profit and which has the highest profit? Very reasonable question to ask. Where are we doing really well? Where are we doing really poorly? And if you were to study this, it would probably take you about 20, 30 seconds to get it. Maybe some of you are really fast at doing this. And, bravo. Office machines in the South is the top, and tables in the East is the lowest. By the way, apparently there's a band in Seattle called Tables in the East. Well, I can still give my stakeholder his or her beloved numbers, but we can color code all the cells using what is called a highlight table or conditional formatting if you are in Excel speak, and instead replace it with something like this. And now you don't even have to look at the numbers. You can just see where's their bright orange, where's their dark blue. Hey, it must be a New York Mets game. In any case, a lot of stuff pops out. I can see tables in general is doing poorly. It's only profitable in one area. And I can see binders and binders accessories is doing well throughout. That was really hard to tell before. All right, so now maybe they're kind of, all right, this looks interesting. Let's take it up a notch. So what have I got here? Tweet activity by hour and day of week. I've got, this is the propensity of a certain politician who will remain nameless to tweet. The fact that I'm using an orange color palette is completely coincidental. But you can see some interesting pockets of activity. You can see, ooh, it's kind of dark over here. Lots of tweetage. A fair amount of tweetage. Very little tweeting over here. Great, that's the highlight table. Well, suppose you want to answer the question, on what day of the week does this politician tweet the most? On what day of the week do they tweet the least? On what hour of the day do they tweet the most? On what hour of the day do they tweet the least? That's really hard to do. But if we add a marginal histogram, just these little bar charts that we can put around the highlight table, the answers are instantly evident. And now, look, you may get pushback going, well, wait a second, why do I need the bars there? Can't I just have my numbers and put the totals on there? Well, now you're going through the numbers again. You're having to look at, is how much bigger, is this a big number? Is this even bigger than that number? Asking the task, what is the day or the hour, most activity or least activity, becomes very difficult. If they say, well, why not just do the highlight table? Well, here's what happens if you highlight the totals. The inside of the table becomes all muted because you have the dark numbers for the totals. Well, let's just focus on just using color. I want to just look at 10 a.m. and 11 a.m. and just show you the degree to which the bars are going to be way better than color. I can see that 11 a.m. is twice as big as 10 a.m. And how can I see that? Because there are numbers in there. If I remove the numbers, can you see that 11 a.m. is twice as big as 10 a.m.? I don't think so. But look at this. If I take the numbers away, I can see 11 a.m. is twice as large as 10 a.m. This is a great, great test of your data visualizations. If you take out the numbers, can people still read and interpret them? By the way, I have a cool quote here. We can say that one shade is darker than another. That's obvious. But to say that it is 2 or 3 times as dark is not visible. It is not readable. Do you know who said that? Charles Menard in 1861. The guy who did that chart. If you don't know what that chart is, I promise you on your journey, you will learn about the famous Napoleon's attempt to conquer Russia between 1812 and 1813. In any case, it's a really cool quote. Translation comes from one of our colleagues, R.J. Andrews, who wrote the fine book, Info We Trust. All right, so that's kind of this first step, the gateway drug to data visualization. You're still giving them the numbers, but you've added color and you've added bar length. In fact, you've now covered 2 pre-attentive attributes. You probably only have like 10 to go to get them up to speed with data visualization. All right, how can you make these things irresistible, that the data visualizations that you create are things that they're like magnets? And in fact, you can change people's behavior, or you can reinforce really good behavior. And I have found, bar none, the best way to get people engaged is make the dashboard about the person. Insert the person into the narrative as much as you can. Not only find out what's important to them, but make them the focus of it. So here's an example I show pretty often. This is a histogram showing the population of the United States as of 2019. So the way to read this is, hey, 25-year-olds. Oh, there are like 4.5 million of them. 30-year-olds. Oh, there looks to be like 4.7 million of them. Not too many people over the age of 100. Now, I think this is really interesting. In particular, I want to know, whoa, what happened here? Why are suddenly people dying at around 74? They're not dying at 74. What happened is way more people were born after 1946. That's the cusp of the baby boom generation. In any case, I find this inherently interesting. My friends and family, maybe not so much. But this is something they can't resist trying. This is a Are You Over the Hill in the USA, where you can, click a bar in your age and you can see how much older or younger you are than other people. By the way, if you are older than 50 years old, this thing is really depressing to see just how much older or younger the rest of the country is than you are. But I don't know anyone who isn't going to put their age in, and then maybe their partner, and then their kid, their parent, their older brother in my case. A great example of this inserting the audience into the dashboard just happened in the last week. Those of you who read the New York Times, especially online, find your place in the vaccine line. This was stellar. Everyone's wondering, it's important to them, the vaccine. I want to get it. How soon can I expect to get it based on the information that we have? And if you you can type this in, you can do this right now. And they're going to ask you 4 questions. How old are you? Where do you live? Are you in any of these professions? And do you have health risks? And then they'll do this calculation saying, based on your risk profile, by the way, most people who answer this is going to be the answer. 270 million people across the United States are ahead of you online. And they made this really cool data visualization to show, here's kind of where you are on the line. And they did a brilliant job of making this something that you're going to try, you're going to get comfortable with the data, you're going to end up putting it in for yourself, your partner, maybe your parent, somebody that you know, et cetera. So and in fact, in my workshops, I have an entire module about what you can do to make the discussion about your stakeholder, to insert the stakeholder into the data visualization. Finally, you're going to get into disagreements when you're trying to convince people that there may be better ways to present the data. And how do you win a data visualization argument? And here are the things you're likely to run into. Bar charts are boring. Use pack bubbles instead. This dashboard isn't colorful enough. Please use more colors. Everybody knows what red and green mean. Use red and green. The marketing slides, that we saw from that company, they had all these great stacked bars and area charts. Shouldn't we do the same thing? Pie charts are great. Donut charts are even better. By the way, in case somebody's taking a screenshot, I'm putting a screaming cat icon there because I don't want anyone to think I actually think these are good things. These are just things you're likely to run into as you're trying to get your organization to adopt good data visualization practices. The screaming cat is an icon we use in the big book of dashboards to say, no, you probably shouldn't do this. I don't have time to discuss all these things, but I do want to discuss the donut chart. And by the way, are you prepared to answer these things? If someone were to say, why shouldn't we use pack bubbles? Maybe there are cases where you should. Or are you armed with good arguments for where the shortcomings of donut charts are or pie charts? Are you prepared to address these things and do it in a nurturing manner, not like this rodent? This is a book I really enjoyed reading to my kids. It's called Hooray for Watney Wat, who is a rodent who has a speech impediment and ends up becoming the hero of the story, dealing with this new classmate who is a data visualization expert and is determined to make sure everyone is aware of her incredible prowess. Actually, she's not a data visualization expert, but she does have very sharp elbows My name is Camilla Capybara. I'm bigger than any of you. I'm meaner than any of you, and I'm smarter than any of you. So there. If you kind of come into a data visualization argument with that kind of attitude of, how much more learned you are in this space, it's probably not going to go particularly well. In any case, let's discuss the pies and the donuts. And by the way, pies have their place. I'm going to show you where they can be absolutely remarkable at revealing a part-to-whole relationship better and faster than just about anything else. Not in this case, though. This rightfully would get a screaming cat. But suppose I'm just interested in looking at tables. I want to know how big is tables compared to everything else. So let me just focus on that for a minute. Now, some people may be able to read this and be able to give a percentage, but it's kind of hard to gauge, how big is that slice? But if I change the orientation of this, wow, instantly I can see, I'm dazzled at how clear this is when it was obscure at the different angle. If you start a pie chart at midnight, I can see the tables is a little less than 25%. By the way, you can also look at chairs pretty effectively and see chairs looks to be about 1/3. By the way, this is the reason why these measuring cups kick ass. Because if you're just looking at two slices of the pie, in this case, it's just the segment that's filled, it's instantly easy to see 1/4, 1/3, half full. Well, the same thing can be said about donut charts at this point. I think this is a fine chart, progress towards a goal. Even without the number in there, I can see that this is 45% of the way. The problem occurs if you have more than one donut chart, and if there are a whole mess of slices. So I think this is absolutely fine. I think this is dreadful because it looks cool. People love having the little number in there, but how much bigger is north than east? Oh, it's twice as big. How do you know that? Because the number is in there. If the number weren't in there, you'd be spending a fair amount of time. Also, with a pie or donut chart, you're trying to show progress towards a goal in this place. What happens if something exceeds the goal? Notice the West region isn't here. What happens if I'm at 105%? How do you show that in a donut chart? The answer is with great difficulty. You do something like this, all these questions are answered really quickly. I can see where I am, how far below goal, how far above goal, how much higher north is than east. Look at north and east. I can see it's twice as big without having to see the numbers that are in them. So there's the lacking version of this, and here's what I think is a better way to show it. Go a little bit further with this, which is, I think this is a good use of a stacked bar chart. If you've got the stacked bar charts suffer from the same problem as pies. You can compare what's along the baseline, and you can compare the overall. That's like, think of the chairs as starting at midnight. Now look at what I can glean from this. I can see for the East region, the chairs is about twice as big as copiers. And I can see overall tables is just a little more than machines. Let me show you the donut chart equivalent of this. Yikes. I can't make any sense out of this. It kind of looks cool because it's circles and people like looking at round objects, but I can't make any sense out of this. So there's the version that I think is much clearer, and there's the version that kind of looks cool, but is analytically bereft, in my opinion. Realize these people that you're going to be nurturing, that getting up to speed, they're not your adversaries, they are your stakeholders. And if you do this right, they should be your collaborators. And if you get them involved, you're going to make way, way better stuff. And collaboration isn't me saying red and you saying blue and us agreeing on purple. That's compromise. Collaboration is when we make something together that is better than what either of us would have made separately. So those are some things to consider in your journey as you're trying to get people up to speed. Let me give you some other thoughts, and to the extent it's kind of an unbridled plug, but one available now is the Big Book of Dashboards. This is for the practitioner. This is, things that may help you make better dashboards, and it's tool agnostic. Coming in May, this is for your audience. It's for the stakeholders. It's for the 99% of people that may not be creating charts or graphs, but need to, but need to realize the extent to which it can help them. And this is to help people in your organization value data visualization to a greater extent. And I hope in helping value data visualization, they'll realize just how much you're bringing to the table. Last item to plug, if you're interested, I've got a workshop coming up on January 26th and 27th. The URL is there, but instead you can find all the stuff at datarevelations.com. Stuff that you disagree, stuff that you want to know more about, please visit the site, send me a note, and lots of free stuff at the website, lots of free resources. So, hey, thank you so much, Tableau. Thank you so much, Chris, Jacob, Skylar, to try out some new content, and hopefully people found it useful.
Great. Thanks so much, Steve. I particularly like how you went through the screaming cats on the chart chat sessions earlier this year. So that was good. And actually, that might be a good segue into one of our first questions. A large amount of trends or a lot of data visualization around COVID, right, kind of really had a big moment, especially early on in the pandemic. Are you seeing any trends in what these visualizations are doing well? How about what they're doing poorly?
So a couple of things come to mind. One is two things that I would never thought would have become as mainstream as they did. One was log scales and all these things trying to show the rate at which the disease was increasing, and how do you show something, how do you explain something on an exponential scale? And I never would have expected that to become mainstream, and every chart in March and April was showing that. The second was the index chart, where events that didn't happen at the same time, and which was, gee, COVID broke out in the United States many weeks after Italy. What was the trajectory for Italy? What is the trajectory for the United States? And these things became mainstream. By the way, that is an incredibly good type of chart to be using in business. My biggest problems were with the so-called official dashboards, and that they were very misleading and difficult to understand. The Atlanta Department of Health, they have since corrected it, but it was just ludicrous. They were trying to show that that the cases were decreasing because they sorted the bars to go from highest to lowest, not by date. It was so misleading. So you violated people's trust when you did this. New York State is doing a pretty good job with the stuff. They're using Tableau, they're using stacked bar charts correctly. I'll defer to other people on this as to, hey, who's really doing this thing well, who's doing it poorly. Certainly the COVID tracker, I think, is trying to do a very good job with it.
Indeed. Next question is around, and I'm going to try to articulate this. So can you talk a little bit about the challenges of designing for a PDF, not having an interactive dashboard? And also, does everything have to be a dashboard or a fancy dashboard?
Hey, I see Adam is typing something in panelists, and he's right. John Byrne Murdoch is doing all the Financial Times stuff, and it's free. Financial Times usually is an expensive subscription, but you can go to ft.com and all the COVID stuff, and it is outstanding. So thank you, Adam. What was the question about? Sorry, I was just noticing that there.
Largely around, if you're limited in sharing out interactive dashboards on Tableau, online or Tableau server, if you're limited to PDFing, that's one part. How can you strategize around that? How can you design around that? And then, does everything have to be a dashboard? Does every request have to be this more comprehensive dashboard?
Oh, that's way too, this is, hey, let's go to the bar afterwards and we're going to chat for about 90 minutes about this. I'm a huge believer that organizations would do way better if they clicked more and printed less. But you're bringing up a valid point, which is, yeah, we'd love to have interactivity, but we can't afford the licensing scheme with this. How do we go about doing this? Not everything has to be a dashboard, and not everything has to be even an exciting or sexy dashboard. I think it's fine to have a boring dashboard. The presentation around the dashboard, the findings of the dashboard should not be boring. It should be amazing. It should have a call to action. But sometimes the dashboard is just something that helps you find an important insight fast. And then what you do with that, maybe in the presentation, it may be a totally different way of presenting the data. Maybe you used a bar chart to finding something, but said, I need to have a visceral reaction of my audience. So maybe I won't do something that's quote unquote best practice. So a dashboard is not necessarily an end to itself, but maybe it is something that will help you find something really useful and important. Maybe you share that as a dashboard. Maybe it becomes part of a PowerPoint deck. Maybe it's part of an animation, or maybe it's you getting up in front of people and going, I got to show you something amazing that I discovered.
And final question, where did you find those measuring cups?
Ooh, you know what? Shoot. I'm because I have, so I have to get permission from the company that makes those measuring cups to include the picture of the measuring cups in my book. That's promoting their measuring cups, but I still have to get their permission for it. So I will find out exactly who that's from. I will type that into the chat in a moment, but it's, it's a credit on the graphic. So I will find that. I don't want to take any more time on this. And wow, did somebody already get this? Dang.
Wow.
Okay, measuring cups are in there. This is the best Tableau user group on the planet, bar none. Thank you.
Great work. Okay, so thanks so much for all of that valuable information, Steve, and thanks everyone for the questions. Now we can move right into Roshni's presentation.
Great, give me just a second to share my screen and cross fingers that nothing breaks. Can you guys see things?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. So thanks for having me. My name is Roshni Gohil, and I work at MIT as a data analyst. I work in the resource development department, which is also called advancement, which is just a fancy way of saying fundraising. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how usability testing your Tableau dashboards can help you build better products for your users. So fundraisers are like salespeople. They have a portfolio of prospective donors, like sales leads, and they also have annual fundraising goals. So we were charged with creating a dashboard or a series of dashboards in Tableau to help fundraisers and their managers manage these portfolios and monitor their performance. We call it the fundraiser portfolio tool. And though we've had Tableau for years, like literally years, Tableau is still new for many of our users. We have assumed in the past that they would get the charts, they would get the filters and that sort of thing. Everything would be intuitive to them because it's Tableau. It's pretty easy to put together and all of that. But what we learned through previous attempts at building an enterprise dashboards is that that is so not the case. And this dashboard was going to be the most visible project that we had worked on. It had the widest audience, and we wanted to make sure that what we were building was on the right track. So as we built out the workbook, that we were building the right product. And that's how we started doing usability testing on our Tableau dashboards. So I'm going to talk about what usability testing is, why and how to perform it, and then also go through some before and afters, all in less than 20 minutes. I will talk fast. So what is usability testing? When I often introduce the concept of usability testing to people who work in IT or in data, they hear, oh, it's user acceptance testing. It's what we do, when we get sign off from our users. But usability testing is very different. It is not UAT. So UAT is all about, are we, does the tool that we are building, does it meet the specifications that we laid out from the beginning? Is it performant? So do data extracts refresh in an acceptable time? When you apply filters, does the page reload really quickly, and all that sort of thing? And it's also about, your validation. So is the data right? Are all the functions, all the filters, when you click on a bar and it's supposed to filter some other table, does all of that work? It's basically all about, does the thing that we built work? And that's, again, what we had done in the past. We built the product right. We built it to specs. But on those projects, what we had learned was that users weren't digging that we had built. We built it, they did not come. So features went unused, they were too complicated, or the projects just weren't useful to the users. They didn't help the users achieve their actual goals. And so what we hadn't done was build the right product. We didn't ask, we asked, does it work? We didn't ask, does it work for our users? And that's where that's where usability testing comes in. So for FPT, we wanted to make sure we were building the right product. And so we added usability testing to our testing process. So in usability testing, you look at 3 different things. Is what you're building intuitive and easy to use or easy to learn? If it's, if maybe on the first try someone doesn't get it, but after the second or third time they got it, then that's what we consider easy to learn, and that's cool. We also talk about goals. So it's one thing to say the tool can do this thing, and you can get the data that you need from the tool, but it's a different thing to say, can the user actually get the data that they're looking for? So again, we're focusing on, is the user able to use the tool the way they need to in order to succeed in whatever it is they're trying to find. And finally, we look at, do users actually want to use it? Because if you can build the best, prettiest thing in the world, but if it doesn't function right, if it, if it's hard to use, it's hard to get to the detail that they want, or what have you, they're not going to want to use it. So we want to make sure that what we build is something that people want to use. Usability testing is something that is done all the time for websites, for mobile apps. I even saw ABC's Good Morning America talking about user testing as a way to earn money if you need a side hustle for Christmas, right? So it's something that's done all the time to to figure out, like, is it easy to log into a website? Is it easy to buy a product? Can you find X on the website or in the mobile app? It's also used for physical products. So things like coffee makers. Does the coffee maker have the right buttons? Are the buttons in the right place? Are filters easy to use and replace, and that sort of thing? I've even done a usability study on space. So we did a study of library spaces at MIT to see, what is working and what isn't working in terms of signage and stuff like that. So we went into this Tableau dashboard project for the fundraiser portfolio tool with a series of focus groups. We did user requirements the way that we would need to. We looked at what metrics we knew that people were collecting. We asked them about the other metrics that were important to them and how they manage their portfolios, what the process looks like. And we also gave them sample dashboards that took some of those metrics and kind of mashed them together in ways that made sense. We had them, fill out a survey for feedback, and that sent us back to the drawing board in terms of how we designed things. And so with a larger team, we ended up having a bunch of sessions about how to design this workbook. We had conversation after conversation where people were spouting all sorts of opinions about how things should be laid out, what charts to use, what filters to show, what words to use. And I don't know how many conversations we had about the dreaded traffic light colors. Still having those conversations, it is painful. But it all kind of came down to the idea of, we are not the users. Like, we can say what we think is how it should be, but without actually talking to the users, without actually seeing the users interact with the content, we're just providing opinions. And so we wanted to make sure that we were doing this right. So we needed to figure out a way to really understand how the users actually interpret the charts that we show them, how they're actually interacting with all the filters and other controls. Is that really too many filters, or is that actually the right number of filters, because these are the things that the user needs to be able to do? And while we were having these conversations about traffic light colors, all I can think about was, well, why can't we apply usability testing to this? It works on websites, it works on physical spaces, it works on physical products like coffee makers. Why not try it? Tableau dashboards are web-based, at least when you put them on the server, they're web-based. They're interactive tools with buttons, and they have filters, just like coffee makers. And sometimes they need a little bit of navigation help, just like a library space. And look, it's a Tableau dashboard. So how do we do it? How do we conduct usability testing? There are a ton of resources out there. These are just a handful of them about how to do usability testing, like soup to nuts, like how do you start, how do you write your script, all of that. And most of these resources are perfectly applicable to trying to do a usability test of a Tableau dashboard or any sort of data product. But there are a couple of caveats, and I'm going to go through them. I'm going to go through the basic process and some of these caveats or these things to keep in mind when you're dealing with a data product that may not be covered in just a generic, like, here's how you do usability testing context. So what is usability testing? In usability testing, you observe about 5 representative users as they attempt to perform specific tasks in the product with the goal of seeing what's the usability issue, what needs fixing, what might trip up some users. So 5 users doesn't sound like a lot, and it really isn't. But your goal here isn't to find every single usability issue. It's to find the big things that are going to trip people up, because by the time you get to the 5th user, you've probably hit most of the big things. And if you happen to have an extra 5 users or an extra 10 or 15 users, you're probably better off trying the test, testing with 5 users, fixing what you found in that first round, then testing again with 5 additional users, and using those additional testers to really to make sure that the changes that you make aren't introducing more new usability issues. So another thing that is interesting about usability testing is that, for the web, you usually can get away with any random user you find on the street. In fact, there are entire sites that are there that do unmoderated usability testing where you put in your information into a screener, and if you meet the right demographics, they pay you to take tests. And that's all fine and good for websites, but for data dashboards, there's a lot that can go wrong if you try it that way. First off, a lot of data dashboards, there's specific jargon that's used, especially in a business context. Maybe not so much for something like a COVID dashboard or something that is more general, but for something that you would often see in a business environment, there's specific jargon that the users will need to know, or that will be part of the tool, that if you just pulled someone off the street or pulled some random person in some other department that doesn't deal with that data, they may not be able to really make sense of it. And they may be able to help with things like, oh, the layout, or some of the design related aspects. But part of usability testing a dashboard is not just the visual look and feel, but it's about the interaction and what you would do in the context of using the tool. So if you're never going to answer the question of how many new hires did we have that quit within 6 months, if that has absolutely no relevance to your work, then you're probably not a good person to test a turnover chart in an HR context. Similarly, we've also found that in data contexts, it's not just the person is relevant or has a need to use the dashboard, but the data in the dashboard is actually relevant to them. So it can be static data, but if let's say you have, in my case, we have a handful of fundraisers. If all of the testers test on a single fundraiser and none of them are that fundraiser, they're not going to really look at the data in the same way. They're not actually going to engage in the data in the same way. So it really is important there. Again, you have relevant users and the data that you're showing them is relevant, even if it's a little outdated. So to step back, in the process of doing this testing, you observe users performing some specific set of tasks. We provide them an intro where we sort of talk about what they'll be doing. We ask them about themselves, about their data process, and then we ask them to work through one or more scenarios or series of tasks. And as they go through these tasks, we ask them to think aloud so that we can understand why they are clicking on things, what they were expecting when they clicked on things, how they're interpreting either terminology on the page or charts or that sort of thing. We also want to stress, and people get really, really stressed out when they are testing because you're watching them do something in the tool and they don't want to mess up and stuff like that. But we really want to stress that we're not testing the user. We're actually testing the tool. They're helping us find the issues in the tool. So if they mess up, that's actually a good thing because it means that something is wrong in the tool that we can then address and fix. So it's not the user that can do wrong. It's the tool that we've built. And we also want them to be honest and open with us, because if they sugarcoat everything, we're never going to get any actual constructive criticism. It's all going to be like, yep, it's good to go, when really, this thing is really, really broken. I don't see any use from this tool ever. All right, so once we get through that intro, we kind of get into the dashboard itself. We show them a dashboard, and one thing that we found with data dashboards in particular, which may not apply as much to websites, is that the first time you present them with the data, whatever it is, you want them to sort of sit back and tell us about what they're seeing. This is a quick check for us to understand if they are understanding the charts that they're looking at, if they get the data, because if they don't get the data from the outset and then you start asking them to do things with the data to find answers to questions, that whole process, everything that follows, all the stuff that you're testing is kind of for naught because they don't get the basics. So in this, in a case where they're having trouble, you sort of want to reach out and ask them, they they see a big chart and they're like, I don't know what to do with this. You guide them through it. So what is that number telling you? What is, what does that dot mean? Get them to again talk about the dashboard so that they are actually kind of interpreting and understanding it, so that we can do the rest of the test, which is do all the, does the terminology and, is everything else intuitive and easy to use and all of that. So this is the main content of a dashboard we tested. There are 6 tiles. They're arranged in 2 rows. And when you click on a tile, what will appear below the tiles is the detail table. So if you click on the 3 under prospects without recent context, you will see a row with 3 prospects and some information about those prospects. So this was one of the first tabs that we tested. And again, Tableau is very new to our users, so we wanted to check 2 things. One, would they get the interaction? Would they get that that they would have to click in order to see detail? And 2, would they actually get the terms that we were using? A lot of the concepts that we're displaying here were new concepts that were created just for this tool. So it wasn't like we had a shared vocabulary that we could rely on the user knowing. So we asked them to answer some questions. So in this case, like let's say we're looking at this oatmeal raisin cookies option. These are actual scenarios we used. We named them after cookies because we used cookies to lure people to testing. Food works. So we asked them, let's say where would you go to find prospects you need to reach out to? This is actually the script that we used here. So we would hope that they would pick a tile, whether it was the right tile or not. We would ask them, well, what does that term that you're seeing actually mean to you? And then instead of asking, telling them, click on the 3, click on that tile or whatever to show the detail, we would ask them to do something that would force them to click on the tile. So for example, pick one of the prospects. Well, how do you find out who the prospects are? Well, you've got to click on a tile in order to see the prospects. And then we go from there. So again, we're not telling the user how to do anything. That's training. What we're doing is we're seeing how intuitive is it for them to go from a question to find an answer or a series of answers, and meet some sort, or achieve their goal, which in this context is finding the answer. So usability testing, we would repeat each scenario with 5 users, and we learn a lot of things. We learned what's confusing, what's maybe straight like what did we think was straightforward that maybe isn't so straightforward? What's hard? What did we think was easy but didn't turn out to be easy, and that sort of thing. And as we're observing them, we will see issues like, oh, they totally missed the filters, or oh, they didn't get that they could click on that thing to see detail or to filter the next table, or they missed the fact that there's this big orange info icon that said, hey, click here to find out what you're looking at. But the other side of it is we also learn about behavior and attitude and feeling. So all that fuzzy stuff. So for example, one of the comments we got on one test was, this page makes me antsy. And we had other testers said similar things. They may not have said it just like that, but they said similar things. And we dug in to say, like, what about it makes you antsy? And what they said was, oh, that orange is really bright. We had used Tableau default orange, and what ended up happening was that orange was really bright. We decided to just tone that down. We chose a less saturated orange, and that made the page a little less intense for our users. We also have learned things about how to communicate with people. So compare is a trigger word for our managers, because we ask them to compare. If they're looking at a team, they may want to compare fundraiser X to the other fundraisers on their team or in a group of fundraisers. But every time we say, well, if you want to compare your fundraisers, they come back to us and say, we don't compare fundraisers. Each fundraiser is different. Each portfolio is different. So we learned through this testing that there are certain phrases that we can't use, or that there are certain ways to convey the usefulness of a tab without using words that are just going to, be a roadblock for our users. So now we sort of set the stage with, like, 3 sentences of, let's say you're looking at this fundraiser, and then you want to, you see that there's an uptick in their activity. Do other fundraisers have a similar uptick? Well, that's a comparison, but we're not ever going to use that compare word with those users. Oh, and usability testing also helps you prioritize, because there are issues that people are going to hit that they're going to be able to recover from, as well as those that they're not. And so in the process of testing, we'll be able to see what are those hard stops, and focus on fixing those issues rather than all of the minutia that's out there. And I'm going to speed through some before and afters because I can't plan time. So this is a scatter plot. We try not to use scatter plots because they are hard. One of the things, we knew that coming into testing this tab, but one of the things that we didn't even think about, and we had 9 people review this mockup. We had most of that same set of 9 people review the actual Tableau tab that we tested. And one thing that we missed was the idea of, well, what is this page actually talking about? The idea of adding this header that says 26 closed proposals, that's something we completely missed, and we wouldn't have realized had we not done testing. I'm going to also speed through some other things. So we are currently in version 2, or about to release version 2 of this tool. And so we've done like 13 rounds of testing between versions 1 and 2. In version 2, we are going from being able to select a single fundraiser to being able to select a team. And we're also fixing some issues that we found during training. Things like, well, most of the time our users aren't expanding their browser to fit the whole screen. So they are either missing the filters, or when they see the view is all sorts of contorted. So we went through, when in testing the teams, we thought we were going to spend a lot of time thinking about the data and the interaction and finding out ways to make that part better. But it turned out almost all of our focus ended up being on our header. So we went through a series of iterations in different groups of testing, because we would test 2 or 3 tabs at a time. And we finally landed on this thing that we thought we were happy with, where, all of the functions are like laid out, they're individually labeled. And then we hit this point where we hid filters using the show hide filters functionality that was new to us in Tableau. And it turned out that was a hugely awful move because every time they wanted to apply a filter and see how it changed the data and explore the data that way, they would have to show filters, apply a filter, hide filters, look at the data, show filters, apply a filter, hide filters. And that there was just a lot of friction there that we didn't anticipate when we said, okay, we're going to go from this view where you have left navigation and you have filters on the right and then data in the middle, to a view that is more streamlined, because we just don't have room for both. And we ended up in this place where we actually moved all of the navigation to be a top nav, like you might see on a website. But even then, we ended up having some issues, because one of the things that we've seen in all of our Tableau testing is that people expect Tableau to work like a website. So when you do things that are not what you would normally see on a website, for example, in this top bar, so we had contacts and goals goes to a tab. This little caret icon expands or contracts the menu. But when you had on a website, normally you'd see this whole thing be one button and it would have one action. It wouldn't be a split button. So when users wanted to expand this, a couple of them actually clicked on contacts and goals to expand it out. So we went through another set of exercises called cart sorting to figure out, here's what we need to do. We should have this mega menu that lets people see all of the tabs and see all of the description around it. So this is really quick, but what have we learned? We've learned, I hope, that we are not our users, that our users are not going to know the data or know Tableau or know all the interactions the way that we do as developers. One of the other things that we've learned throughout this process is Tableau is a website, and we need to try to make a lot of the interaction that we put into Tableau, that whether it's native to Tableau or it's things that we do with filters and dashboard actions and things like that. We need to make it as close to what one might be able to do on a regular website. And we've also learned that data is hard. Some of the charts that we thought were really simple, we had people have trouble with. And usability testing helped us, sort of unearth some of those issues so that we could either change the chart type, or think about how we would talk about something in training, or simplify the order of different tables or charts on a dashboard. So I think that's everything. I have this whole list of resources, which I will throw into the chat in a moment, but I think I am out of time, unless I'm not.
You're good. You're good. I
Okay.
think on time. I think we could squeeze in one question. What tool is used to create the dashboard mockups?
So the mockup, which I'm trying to get to, was done in Balsamic. It's balsamic, like the vinegar, but with a Q instead of a C. If you are a Confluence user, they also have a Confluence plugin, so you can embed your Balsamic, or an add-in, so you can embed your Balsamic mockups into Confluence. So
Fantastic. Thanks.
yeah.
And yeah, any other questions, you could type into the QA and we'll try and get to them. But with that, we will pass it over to Adam.
Hey, Chris, thank you. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Cool. All right, so hey, everyone, I'm gonna run through this quickly. My name is Adam McCann, and head of analytics at a startup here in New York called Kimi. What I'm gonna walk through today is a new feature in Tableau 2020.4, which is in beta, which is about layering. And it's probably the feature that's been released that I'm most excited about. And I've been using Tableau for an embarrassingly long amount of time, like 8-9 years, something like that. So what I'm going to walk you through is how you can use it, both for, I think, its intended use case, which is to add multiple map layers, as well as some other use cases. So this is your traditional map showing tropical storms in Tableau. So the line is the path of the storm, the point is the intensity and what type of storm it was at that point in time. And then you see you've got two axes, one for the line, one for the mark. And in the background, you have a demographic variable. In this case, it's population. You can see it's hard to see the state labels, the city labels. It's hard, you can't add more than 2 mark types if you wanted to show hospitals or schools or population, other population demographics on here. But what you can do now in 2020.4 is add as many layers as you want, theoretically. In this view, I have 7 layers, all coming from 4 different data sources, and I'm gonna walk you through how I did it. So I don't want this background layer because it's not pretty. I can't read it, as Steve just explained. It's hard to see the color differences in population between these 2 points. So what I'm going to do is, instead, I'm going to make my background map a weather map. And this is using a web map service, which shows rainfall. This is real time, so this is live rainfall in the Gulf of Mexico. But you can see I lost my, all I can see is rain. I don't see state boundaries. I don't see city labels. I'm pretty lost. So let's now add state. And you see this new feature called Add Marks Layer. When I drag this here, I see a new marks card created. I change it to map. And I get my map. I'm going to kill the fill. And now I'm going to get my borders. And I'm going to disable this so that I can't select it. And now I have boundaries, state boundaries. And I could do this with, theoretically, counties, cities, really anything I want. But I want to add city labels. So how do I add another mark? So I just turn on, I've already set this up because I only have a few minutes here. Now I've got city labels sized by population, but I want to add back my demographic variables, my choropleth that was in the base map. And so I have a preset value here that shows my choropleth. But now I've lost my weather map. So if I want to toggle it, because I now have the ability to toggle based off of determining the number of layers I want, I can either show it or I can hide it. And unlike when you have a background map that's provided to you from Tableau. But what if I want to add schools? So I have schools here as well. This is coming from another data set. I'm going to make it visible. And now my green stars are schools sized by the total populations. And what if I want to add hospitals? And I can add them by red dots sized by the total number of beds. They all have different tooltips that I can dictate. They can all have embedded chart types. And now I have a very busy, very rich map that has 7 layers. It's a lot to see. So I bring it over to my dashboard. It's all on one worksheet. I bring it over to my dashboard. And I can have these little controls here where I turn off the layers I don't want to see, all tied to parameters, and I can adjust my map. So, and I can start adding more layers. So I can add, if I want to show animal shelters, things that would be affected if I were in the event of a hurricane. And you can even toggle the intensity, the color, and you can present all these adjustments that are on the map and allow the user to control them. Whereas when you're using Tableau's base background maps, it's hard to do that. It's impossible for the user to do that. So that's an example with maps. There's a great example Mark Reed walks through about how to add more layers to maps, but you can do more than just maps. So this is a choropleth map of voting patterns in the state of Arizona for the 2020 presidential elections. But if I want to say, if I wanted to see the voting patterns by county compared as a bar chart, I can add bar charts now to my maps all in one worksheet. So I'm going to add a y-axis. I'm going to add a county label with a little dot next to it that indicates how many people voted. I'm going to add a bar for Democrats and a red bar for Republicans. And now you have a bar chart on a map all in one worksheet, and you can toggle whether it's shown. And you can even have a little animated button that changes what year is shown at the top here, all driven by parameters. Now, what if I want to see all that data at one time? I want to show how many people voted. I want to have my y-axis, a reference line, a line for Democrats. Oh, sorry, hold on. A line for Democrats, Republicans, a line for Democrats, and a label for the county. So now you can see over time on a choropleth map, change in voting patterns, and then you can hover over and see the real difference in the 2020 election was Maricopa County went blue and won the state for Joe Biden. And again, you could toggle off and on certain things. You have parameters. Do I want to see vote totals or not? And the last thing I want to show is KPIs all in one dashboard. So this is a KPI dashboard. This is a KPI worksheet showing 12 different KPIs. So I have one here. It's a circular little band. It shows the total sales indicator, whether sales is up or down relative to its target. But now if I want to add a line chart, more KPIs, you can add essentially theoretically an infinite number of marks onto a single visualization. And now I have a KPI dashboard with 12 different mark types, 6 different indicators, all in one worksheet. And so some of the benefits of this is now sortable. So if I want to have data that sorts this, rather than placing all these individual 6 KPIs into containers, if I want to sort them to say, hey, show me the bad ones first and show me the good ones last, or show them to me alphabetically, increase pre-attentiveness by saying, let's move the ones you should look at into the upper left corner and move the ones you don't really need to focus into the bottom right corner. And you can see the final version here. And you can do all the things like adjust parameters and just filters. But this is a game changer in that you can, and this has been released for a couple of weeks now, and I don't think the full release has been pushed out. But this is a game changer in that you can add really as many marks as you want to a visualization, recognizing that sometimes that can get very busy and dense and overwhelming to a user. But I think it really opens up the creative possibilities for the types of visualizations that you can create. And just one thing on caveats, still in beta. And what you're using to render all these points, sorry, I skipped over that, is a feature called Make Points. So when I went and added my school and university, I used a calculated field called Make Points, which borrows my latitude and longitude from the Latin longs from the school and university. This then ties this Latin long to the generated Latin long that you traditionally see in maps on Tableau. And that's how you keep adding points and differentiating between the longitude and latitude of your universities versus your hospitals versus your storm points versus your storm paths and so forth and so on. So you use make points and you just keep adding those layers onto your visualization. Make points only does not support table calcs. It does support levels of detail. I don't know the performance ramifications. Something was asking me about this is when you have a complex KPI dashboard that's rendering lots of points, is this better than rendering 6 different worksheets versus one worksheet? I don't know the answer to that. It's pretty new, but performance from what I've seen, again, this is using Superstore, performance for what I've seen has been relatively stable. And animation is not supported, so you can't animate. Animation has never been supported for maps, and you still can't animate maps, but you could animate the other controls or elements on your visualizations that are not tied to what is essentially now a bunch of maps on your visualization. So that's it. I wanted to just hit this on 5 or 10 minutes. This is a pretty cool new feature. I'm really excited about it. If you want to read more, Jeffrey Schaefer, who writes a blog called Data Plus Science, has written a great article about how to use this in 2020-24, as well as Luke Stanky and Mark Reed have also written posts about this new feature.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much, Adam. That was amazing. I think most of us will agree. Really groundbreaking features there. So thanks so much for walking us through. Couple of questions. Workbooks available for download, I believe, on your Tableau Public?
Me? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sure. Of course.
We could drop that in the chat.
Yeah,
and
I'll put it in
you could
there.
explore many other of Adam's visualizations. Really, really great stuff. Question around make points not supported. Oh, make points not supporting R and Python unless they are done in Tableau Prep. I'm not sure if I interpreted it correctly.
I think he's referring to calculated fields that connect to R and Python via Tableau Serve or via the server connection. I don't know. That's a good question. Probably not. That's a good point. I would push that. In general, I push those things to prep. It makes more sense to push those to prep because it's really heavy to do in the desktop. But I don't know the answer. I'm sorry.
Thanks. Looks like that's all the questions that we have right now. And if anyone else has questions, you could drop them in the QA. But if not, we can close out. I bring back up my screen here. Many of you have asked about if the recording will be available. So recordings are available on YouTube. This is done via through the Tableau team, so I'm not sure what the timeline will be, but if you do a quick Google search, you will see the last 2 virtual events that we've had. So yeah, with that, a couple of important links here and just some follow-up around where you can find us on Twitter and LinkedIn and how to volunteer to host. So with that, Steve, Roshni, Adam, thank you so much, and thank you all for participating, and hope to see you in 2021.